finished my course, and then I got my first job. I was the first programmer to be employed by the university, and that's where I started my career.
Wow.
So I was one of probably the very first few. I would honestly say that to the best of my knowledge, I may be wrong, I was the second Indian employee.
You're listening to Who Is My Neighbour, a podcast by You Belong Australia. Each episode, you'll join with Sorgal and Warren to meet some of Australia's newest neighbours. You'll hear their stories, listen to their hopes and dreams, and discover the incredible courage and inspiration they bring to our communities and richly diverse Australian culture. You'll also learn from some more established Aussies too, and the joy they've found living and working alongside our refugee and migrant background neighbours.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Who Is My Neighbour. Today we're going to be talking to Gitie House, who has an award, Order of Australia medal, for her work with international and multicultural people here in Toowoomba.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, I don't think there is anyone in Toowoomba who doesn't know Gitie or haven't heard of her and her work that she's doing in the community. Well, we hope you enjoy listening to Gitie's story.
Gitie, thank you so much for joining us today on Who Is My Neighbour.
My pleasure.
Gitie, we know we've heard a lot, we've spoken many times in the past, but just for our viewers, could you just tell us a little bit about your background?
That's a very big question.
I know. Yeah.
That is a big question. When you say background, exactly how far do you want me to go?
Not too far back.
Look, I came to Toowoomba in 1978, okay, because I actually fell in love with an Australian and married an Aussie, as you all know.
Yes.
And so we came to Australia then. But he is from Brisbane. Ron is from Brisbane.
Okay.
And I was halfway through doing my master's in physics from the University of Delhi. And when we went for our visa, the High Commission told me that, look, go to Australia, finish your degree there. So we came then. But when we got here, we found that the University of Queensland wouldn't accept my qualifications at all.
At all?
At all.
Oh,
So they would not accept my honours, they would not accept my bachelor's. I was willing to redo my master's year, but they would not accept any of it. Even though the curriculum was the same, they wouldn't accept it. So that was really devastating because I had been wanting to be a physicist since I was 9 years old. It was my dream, it was my life, you know.
Yeah.
So it was really devastating at that point in time. And then at that time, the University of Southern Queensland was the Darling Downs Institute of Advanced Education.
Yes.
So they were willing to accept my qualifications, but they didn't offer physics and they didn't offer a master's in physics.
Yeah.
But Ron was all into computing at that time, so he suggested that I might like to do information technology.
Yeah.
And DDIE let me do a postgraduate degree in
awesome.
Information technology. So that's how I happened to come to Toowoomba from Brisbane.
Yeah.
And we moved here, and that was really the start of our Toowoomba journey.
Wow.
So since then, you've always been in Toowoomba?
More or less.
Wow.
Not all the time, but a lot of the time.
Yeah. Gitie, I think that things were not like now when you first arrived. Tell us a little bit about your experience when you first arrived in Toowoomba. How did it feel like?
Well, it was very strange because, I came from Delhi, city of, at that time, 12 million people. Very crowded place,
Yes.
very busy place.
Yep.
To a sleepy little village in the
Very
back
quiet.
of Australia. Even Brisbane was very quiet and
Yes.
empty in comparison.
Yes.
So Toowoomba was an extremely slow and sleepy town. And of course, at that time, everything shut at 5 o'clock sharp.
Yes.
And nothing was open in the evenings, and
Yeah.
nothing was open on the weekends except for 3 hours on Saturday morning. So it was, to call it quiet was an understatement,
Yes.
Complete change. I understand
Complete
you.
cultural shock. And of course, you can't go anywhere without public transport. Well, some things don't change. We still have that issue over here in Toowoomba. But that's all right. The thing is, sometimes a mountain changes exactly what the universe orders. And you sort of learn to appreciate the countryside.
Sure.
And I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a community here in Toowoomba?
No, there was nobody really. There were just a few friends that we knew. And, I did have an aunt and uncle and some cousins here. And so, but it was like we were, the first couple of Indian families.
Yeah.
That is just basically it at the time.
Yeah. Well, I feel you because I arrived in 2018, and to me, Toowoomba was the quietest place I've ever been to.
Wow.
Coming from Istanbul, from Turkey to here was a complete change. So I know what you mean exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you went to the University of Southern Queensland for study. And I think at that time they didn't have many international students. How was that?
Yeah, they didn't. The international program didn't start for quite a few years after. So when I started, I finished my course and then I got my first job. I was the first programmer to be employed by the university. And that's where I started my career.
Wow.
So I was one of probably the very first few. I would honestly say that to the best of my knowledge, I may be wrong, I was the second Indian employee.
Wow.
Because Dr. Josan was the first, he was a lecturer in chemistry. He was the first Indian family to be here. And then I was the first Indian student, but I was like an Aussie, when I came here. I didn't come here as an international student.
Yeah.
So the program didn't start, and that too, it started as external courses in the 1980s. And, I was actually working on the student record system that maintains all the records and runs all the registration and enrollments and assessments for the students and things like that.
Right. So now, in terms of multiculturalism, how multicultural was Toowoomba in the 1980s?
Not very. I mean, I'm not saying that it didn't have people from different backgrounds. It sure did. Because even from the very beginning, even from the early settlers, there were people from different parts of the world already here. From Germany, from Ireland, from Afghanistan. So there were people from different backgrounds from the very early years and from, the Asian markets and as well as Indians. Even Indians were here long ago, but, they dispersed after a while. They went on to other parts of the country. So it's not that there weren't people from other backgrounds, but they were not as well known and there were very few.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Gitie, you've been really heavily involved, certainly over recent years, with that international community here, which is a little different to how you described Toowoomba to start with. How did you first get involved in working with the international, intercultural, multicultural community in Toowoomba?
No, I've always believed that people from all different backgrounds should be able to get along with each other. And it's always been a driving motivation for myself. My parents come from totally different cultures. And in a country that was very, I won't say just country, in a world, because at that time the whole world was very, very focused on their own culture, It was very, you sort of, everything was done within your own group, so to speak.
Yes.
But so coming from growing up in a country like that, but my father's generation, his parents' generation, they defied all those rules, and they had marriages, between different people from different backgrounds, people from different religions, people from different parts of the country. Something that was considered a no-no, actually.
Yes.
But they were very open-minded, and they all did that.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in a very multicultural family.
Yeah.
And so that has always influenced me, and I've always loved the fact that one can be in harmony with people from different backgrounds.
Yes.
And so it was always a driving force.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that diversity always opens up ways to learning about different cultures and getting involved and just enjoying the multiculturalism and the rich cultures that we have in Toowoomba and in Australia in general. Recently, in the recent years, we've seen many new arrivals, new communities settling in Toowoomba. And I think that to many would be a little bit different experience, but with lots of activities and events that are going on in Toowoomba, it is kind of helping these new communities to integrate. What do you think about that?
I think it's wonderful because here we have a quiet town, which really has people from over 200 backgrounds.
Yeah.
So for its population, now the big cities do have a very diverse population.
Of course, yeah.
But they are, big, huge metropolis with, millions of people living there. But here, Toowoomba is a small region, and people, it's 200 different backgrounds in a small area. Means that people are interacting with each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it gives us a unique opportunity to make those friendships. Because you don't get locked into just associating with people who are similar to yourself.
Gitie, having been to the Language and Cultures Festival for a few times since arriving in Australia, I've always thought, who came up with this idea? And obviously your organization has been running or organizing this festival for a long time ago. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it was several groups were involved in it, and it came up about quite spontaneously because people had been here for many years. There was an international cooking club. There was, people sharing. Food is always something that people share. The biggest sharer in the universe is food.
Yeah.
So all that was already in place, So it was just a question of the fact that now there was a significant international population, we felt. There were people from many backgrounds.
Yes.
And it was time to sort of celebrate the different cultures. And so that's how basically different people went up to council and of their own accord said, look, we need something, and so we all got together and did that. So the Modern Languages and Teachers Association was also thinking along the same lines. We were thinking along the same lines, and so it just sprouted from there.
It's a great initiative, and it's exciting to see, isn't it, in a small town like Toowoomba, such a large festival celebrating languages and cultures is really encouraging and really inspiring. I wonder, Gitie, could you give us perhaps, and those who are listening in, some advice for people who are trying to connect, trying to make friends with people from different language backgrounds who may not have really had much experience with people from different cultures? What would you suggest?
Look, Australia is very unique, and it is a very friendly place. Okay, and one has to understand and respect and embrace those strengths of Australia. So one of the strengths of Australia is that it's a very friendly place. When you look at people, you look at them in the eye and you smile. Now, that is not a thing that is done in every country. In some countries, in some cultures, it is very much a no-no. You do not go around smiling at all. And
At all.
it is considered rude. It is considered weird.
They will misunderstand it.
And it is considered offensive even to some, you know. So that is something that takes a while. It takes a while when you've grown up in a culture where you mustn't do those things. To come into a place where everybody is doing it, it takes a while to sort of relax enough and change your way. You know? So even if you don't initially, and even to look at people in the eye, especially men to women, or in some countries where there's a lot of class system, for example, you don't look at somebody whom you might think is a class above you. You know, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's any other reason for the class structure, it doesn't matter. You don't do that kind of thing. It's considered rude. So it takes a while. It takes a long while for people to change their way of doing things. But this is an important one to sort of learn to do, because it's what helps build trust. It's what helps people understand the fact that, oh, yes, it is all right. I am looking you in the eye. I am wanting to make friends with you. You know, and you start with that. But even if you're feeling shy and you're not exactly comfortable showing all your 32 teeth, at least look with a twinkle in the eye and say, hello.
I can absolutely relate. When I first arrived in Australia, and I used to take morning walks every day, and every time I would walk in Queen's Park, I would see people looking at me, smiling and saying, morning. At the beginning, it sounded, or it looked and felt a little bit weird. I'm not used to that. I grew up in the Middle East, where you don't say hi or you smile to strangers, and especially, as you said, women and men. But I got used to that, and I found it such a nice way of greeting or just looking, smiling to a person that you don't know. It doesn't matter if you know or not, but every day it made my day, honestly.
That's
now,
nice.
That was the advice for people trying to learn how to interact with the migrant and refugee communities. What would be your advice for new arrivals who are still trying to find their ways in this country? As a person who has been through this experience, what would you advise them?
See, on one hand, there's a lot of help available now that was not there before. So when people come in here, and they come from different situations, so it's very hard to say what anyone particular should do, you know, because the thing is, their circumstances from which they have come might be very different. And when you don't know the language, it is really awkward. You feel you're not sure you understand what people are saying to you. You can only ask them to repeat it so many times without feeling strange. But to know this, that even for us who have been here many times, for many years, I mean, we still run into the situation where we don't understand sometimes what is being said. You know, so it is common. Don't let that worry you, you know, too much. I think the thing is to embrace the opportunity. Sometimes people feel shy and they feel reluctant, or they're not sure what they may or may not be allowed to do. Just ask. Australians are very helpful. Australians want to help.
Like to share.
And, you know, they are always keen. You go into a shop and the first thing people come and say, can I help you? You know, and that is just so wonderful. So it's cultural. People want to help. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but accept the help.
That's brilliant. I think there's a little bit on both sides, really, isn't it? We need to be a little bit patient and just understand it may take a little while, but it's worth it.
Yes, and also understand that just the way everything is new to you
Yeah.
and to your own personal culture, and you are having to learn a lot of new things, to the other people. And when I say the other people, I don't just mean mainstream Australians. I mean, so many new people have come, new settlers have
Yes.
come from so many different backgrounds. And we are all coming from different cultures. So we all have different interpretations of the same thing. And so we are always, all of the time in learning mode.
Yep.
Yes.
You know, so because nobody can know everything about any culture, even your own.
Yeah.
You can't just say
No, that's right.
everybody from this place is like that.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Because
true.
nobody
Yes,
is
that's very
completely.
true.
True.
Yeah.
Some things will be common and some things will not.
Yes.
And everyone is uniquely different.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
So the thing is that people are also trying to understand me at
Yeah.
the same time as I'm trying to understand
Sure.
200 other cultures.
Yes.
You know? So we have
Yeah.
to have that patience. We can't. Nobody can afford to get offended about this or offended about that because you don't know what the other person has understood or not understood
course.
and what they are trying to do.
Yes.
So we have to have that patience. We have to have that open mind. And we have to have the heart.
Yes.
Yep.
We have to have the heart to say, okay, I don't know everything. I'm trying to understand. And that person is also trying to understand. The main thing is that they're sincere and they want to help.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And we have to make room for that.
Yeah,
Sure.
for
Yep.
sure. Gitie, it's been fabulous. We could talk all day.
Absolutely.
But we really appreciate the time that you spent to come in and chat with us a little bit and to share some of your wisdom and experience. And we look forward to hearing you again.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Welcome back. Well, we've just listened to Gitie's house story.
Yeah.
Warren, what is your takeaway of her story?
Wow, Gitie House, I've known for many years in the community. As you had said in the introduction, she's very well known
She is.
in the Toowoomba community. But it was really interesting to hear a little bit more of her story from when she first came
Yeah.
to Toowoomba, that sleepy little country town that it was, one of the first Indian families to be as students at USQ and also as employees at USQ, and trying to find a community here, and to hear her talk a little bit about how Toowoomba has changed, and now
Yeah.
with over 200 different cultures and communities here. I thought that was very, very interesting.
It absolutely is. I think what I liked most about her story, well, I like listening to her story in general, but what would I have learned from her story? Probably the advice that she's given to people trying to interact with the refugee and migrant communities, and also the refugees and migrant communities trying to find their way in Australia, trying to interact and integrate.
Yes.
That was really good.
Exactly.
From her own experience being married to an Australian, so coming here not as a refugee, but she came as a student, as a married woman to an Australian. So she has obviously had this experience of being a person from a different background, but an Australian as well.
Yes, exactly. And I think she said a couple of times the importance of just being patient, that
Yeah.
it does take time,
Yep.
and don't expect it to all happen just at once. There will be some misunderstanding, talking about whether you should look someone in the
Yeah.
eye or not. There will be some confusion on both sides
Yep.
for long-term residents of Australia as well as newcomers. We were all trying to work out how to do this thing. And I think that was very wise. I think
Yep.
sometimes we get a little bit frustrated if things don't go exactly as
Both
we
ways,
hoped. Yeah.
right? So I've heard from many Australian friends that they feel a little bit worried about how to talk to a person from non-Australian background. Would they be offended if we said that? How would that feel like if we said cultural values? So many things that they are super worried about. And on the other hand, we are sometimes worried of doing something that might not be culturally appropriate for Australian.
Yeah.
And I think we just gotta try and act naturally and let each side integrate and interact together without worrying about what's going to happen, because it takes time.
Exactly. And to have that attitude, as Gitie said, of being, we're always learning.
Yeah.
And we're always going to be learning.
Sure.
And everyone is different. Even, two people from the same cultural background can be quite different.
Yep.
So if we have that attitude of learning about one another, openness, acceptance, willingness to try to understand, there's a long way.
It's this individual learning. So as you mentioned and as Gitie talked about it, is that sometimes we know about a specific culture, but we never think if an individual person is different. So we don't have to really talk or deal with that person based on our knowledge of that culture, because people are different.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And of course, the other thing that stays with me a long time, every time I speak with Gitie, I guess, is her positivity, her very positive energy.
She's very positive.
Yes, there's difficulties. Yes, there's confusion. Yes, there's things that we have to try to work through to understand one another. But let's be positive. And I think that's a really good take-home message for all of us.
It is, absolutely.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on Who is My Neighbour?
Thanks for listening to this episode of Who is My Neighbour? To learn more about the work of You Belong Australia, just head to youbelong.org.au and find out all the ways you can get involved and empower refugees to integrate and thrive. Lastly, would you help support this podcast simply by sharing it with others? You can also write a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or subscribe to us on YouTube. Yes, we are a video podcast as well. Well, thanks again for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Who is My Neighbour?